Hey guys, Andrew here again from Cresthaven Games. Thank you for sticking with me after the completion of my gameplay video for the first scenario of Act 1, Gigarat. I hope you enjoyed that and it was helpful in your decision making if this campaign is something you wish to support. Let's go ahead now and just cover a little bit further information and get into the post scenario cleanup phase, town phase, leveling, buying gear, crafting gear, that sort of thing. As we didn't have the opportunity to see what an injury would look like, as I got very fortunate during my gameplay video and did not suffer any mercenaries being incapacitated, let's pretend one of them had been so we can draw a card and take a look at that. Here we see a medium injury card, which would be drawn if a hero's health was reduced to 0 during combat and they did not successfully perform a cheat death roll. Medium injury just denotes how much it's going to cost the party to heal that injury back in town. A minor injury would cost 1 gold, a medium injury would cost 2, and a heavy injury would cost 3. And they have varying degrees of impact in terms of debuff to the mercenary that has the injury. The numbers at the bottom of the card from left to right, -6, -9, -12, correlate to the effect that hero will feel from this injury in Act 1, -6, Act 2, -9, and Act 12. Act 3, -12 in the third act. So the further you get, the more punch these injuries inflict on our mercenaries. Now, some of those injury cards may cause other things than just reductions in health. It may be a decrease to your attack rate and the number of die during a combat roll. It may affect your accuracy and it may be more difficult to successfully hit. It may reduce the damage that you output as your offense score. It may reduce your overpower or spell overpower. These can literally affect any one of your stats. Now, if you recall from the end of the gameplay video, in the first video that I released, you'll remember that upon defeating Gigarat, the party gained 20 experience. Let's take a look at that here. It's just denoted by tokens from our token trays. So here we see 20 experience. This is for each mercenary. So they each get to spend that in the town phase towards leveling up. And we'll cover that in a moment. During the loot phase of our fight with Gigarat, we rolled on the humanoid level 1 table as well as the Gigarat loot table. And with our 2 rolls on Gigarat, we obtained a few things. We obtained the ornate talisman, which is a recipe, and on the back of the card we see the ingredients required in order to craft it for 0 gold at the blacksmith. Alternatively, some items can be purchased with gold, but typically when you get a recipe like this, they can only be crafted, not purchased. We also had been rewarded with the temple robes recipe, which you see here. It shows wit +1 and faith +1 and has a body armor value of 1. So that looks like a useful piece of gear. And we see the crafting components required to make one of those as well on the back. From the remainder of our rolls, we also obtained 3 wood in terms of resources, 1 leather, 1 copper, a total of 15 gold across the loot rolls as well as the scenario rewards, and 1 gem. So those are our resources going into the town phase on top of the 20 experience and the 2 crafting recipes. When you defeat a boss or an elite enemy named enemy, they typically have their own loot tables and have some pieces of equipment that may be obtainable on the loot roll, and some of these are named pieces of equipment with a U next to their name, meaning unique, and that is the single opportunity during the playthrough of your campaign that your team has to acquire a unique piece of gear, which can only be obtained once. You can't have duplicates. So the stat of magic find as well as loot reroll are two useful stats you may wish to spec towards in one of your mercenaries so that you increase the likelihood of getting the gear you really want to get following an encounter. Now, loot reroll is an ability that mercenaries gain by having 6 or more luck or an item that grants it. And it gives them the ability to reroll 1 die per mission when rolling for loot, and that can be any die. So it's recommended you use that reroll on the higher loot table, for example, Gigrat in my last video. Magic Find is also an ability that helps in this regard, and it is gained by having 10 or more wit or an item that grants it, like Gambler's Dice. And a player with Magic Find has the ability to roll 1 additional die per mission when rolling for loot. Again, recommended to use it on the higher tier loot tables. Throughout the duration of the narrative campaign, we have the opportunity to level our mercenaries from the experience we've gained, and there are various things that we are able to obtain at each level. 3 different types of rewards. One is the ability to roll for a random secondary attribute. Another is to gain a secondary attribute of the player's choice that's more valuable. And there is also the ability to have a primary attribute increase or unlocking a secondary or master class for that mercenary, which would gain access to a new skill card. Mercenaries can carry 2 skill cards at any one time into battle, but these can only be swapped out if you have more than 2 when you're in the town phase, not during combat. Looking at this table here, we see that when leveling heroes, we start at level 1 with 0 experience. All of our heroes gained 20 experience at the completion of that last scenario, and so if we were to spend that, we could use it to obtain 1 random secondary attribute for each mercenary. So let's go ahead and do that now and see what happens. Here we see if we roll a 1 or a 2, that hero or mercenary would gain 1 might, 3 or 4, 1 agility, 5 or 6, 1 wit, 7 or 8, 1 faith, 9 or 10, 1 luck. Let's roll for Halbjorn first, and we get a 4, which will give +1 to his agility. Looking next at this proficiency chart, we see that +1 agility to Halbjorn, who has an agility of 4 currently, would increase that attribute to 5, and a 5 or 6 attribute leads to a proficiency rating of +3. Looking at his dashboard, then, we see that we are going to be replacing his agility attribute of 4 to 5, bumping him to the proficiency rating of +3. This then allows us to take a look at our speed attribute, which, if we recall, is calculated with 3 plus our agility proficiency. In this case, that means our speed has increased to 6. And we see that change here now. Of note, I believe this player aid has a typo because in the normal mode of Bloodwork, the max health is calculated with a base health of 10 plus 5 times your might attribute, not the proficiency +3. That would have meant he has 25 max health, but I've confirmed with the developers that he does have 35, so I believe that is a typo which likely will be corrected. Or there will be 2 forms of this card, one for the more advanced hardcore mode with permadeath and increased difficulty, where it is calculated off of the might proficiency. Let's go ahead now and roll for Mary. And off camera we see that that was actually a 9. I will zoom out so you believe me. Here we go. There's the die. Pulling it into view. 9, and 9 is luck. So we will increase Mary's luck by 1. As Mary currently has a luck attribute value of 4, this will put her into the 5 to 6 range, increasing her proficiency to +3. There is Mary's level 1 luck ability and proficiency. This is increased to an ability of 5, proficiency of +3. And if you recall, cheat death is calculated with a base number of 10 minus the luck proficiency, so we now cheat death for Mary on a 7+. That was huge for Mary. Let's now roll for Maeve and see what happens. And we have a 3 for Maeve, which is agility. Maeve currently has an agility attribute of 5, so this will put her to the upper range of 5 to 6, so her proficiency remains unchanged. Swapping out her base agility attribute of 5 to 6, we see that here now. However, as speed is calculated as 3 plus your agility proficiency, it remains unchanged at 6. Finally, let us roll for Saren, and we get a 5. 5 increases Saren's wit. As the proficiency range is based on the 5 to 6 range of the wit ability value, it will remain unchanged at +3. Making that change there, we see that Gambit remains unchanged, as that is equal to the ability proficiency of 3 in your wit ability stat. Going back to the XP leveling chart, we see that we just completed leveling up to level 2 for all mercenaries by spending 20 experience. I'm not certain if that means experience is now back to 0 and we have to build up 60, or do we just need to build up the difference between level 2 and level 3 of 40? I think it is that, but I'm waiting to confirm with the developers. Regardless, we see the flow here that once we reach level 3, we get to choose our secondary attribute on leveling up. And on level 4, we get a primary attribute. So for Halbjorn, that would be Might. And we ascend to Tier 2 new class and unlock new skill card. Definitely looking forward to that. All right, let's talk about the town phase. I'm going to interpret this information to the best of my ability. I have not yet seen anyone else talk about the town phase, and I have not talked with the developers directly about it. But during this phase is when we craft gear with our crafting supplies and our recipes. We can also buy gear. We can visit the healer to heal our injuries. This is also where we can go to the tavern and spend gold to experience random events. We can also visit the guild where we can get new contracts like the Goblin Heads and Lost Ledgers. The guild also makes available achievements. So once you've made your first achievement, such as displacement expert for Halbjorn, you could then go to the guild to unlock a further achievement to work towards. I also will note here at this time that in the gameplay video for Displacement Expert, I was interpreting knockback as counting towards that, but the card actually reads slam an enemy, so knockback does not necessarily trigger slam unless they hit another unit or obstructing terrain, and I gave myself 2 points there for knockback, so I have since reduced that, and he now only has 3 on his achievement track. Now, completing these contracts as well as achievements will give mercenaries powerful runes to augment their gear temporarily or permanently, new specializations, and other rewards. Here we see the contracts for both goblin heads as well as lost ledgers from the first gameplay video, where we successfully gathered 6 grunt goblin heads and dug up 1 lost ledger. The track for goblin heads is a cumulative reward for the entire party. Everyone's heads combined together. The goal on that card was to successfully gather 15 heads to get the reward on the back of the card. Recall, however, that each individual mercenary collects their own heads, which they can turn in the town phase for various rewards for them individually. Runes are typically unlocked through the completion of these contracts, and they come in 3 flavors: bronze, silver, and gold, and they can be slotted to either armor or weapons, dictated by the shape of the rune. Weapon runes are shaped as a diamond, whereas armor runes are shaped like a shield, noted on the left. Once a rune has been attached to a particular piece of equipment, it cannot be moved to another card or piece of gear, even if it is gold, which is permanent. That one doesn't go away. It's not a consumable. These runes also have varying strengths. If they have if they have an absence of lines under the symbol, then it's a level 1 rune that gains or gives +1 to a particular stat, whereas a rune with 2 lines below the symbol is a level 2 rune that gives +2 to the particular statistic. Bronze are always level 1, +1 to any particular stat, and they're discarded after 1 battle. Silver are always level 2, +2 to a statistic, and they become bronze after the first battle, so they last a total of 2 battles. And gold are level 1 or level 2, and they're permanent. Now, runes can affect your armor value, your evasion, your resilience, your speed, your attack rate, your offense, your overpower, your combat reroll, your critical chance, and your accuracy. Now that we actually have inventory collected from the last scenario, we can finally use the inventory slot on the tracker over there and show where we can put our communal supplies. The individual mercenary achievements, once the particular threshold for that achievement is met, you gain that card, obtain the specialization, and it is available immediately to that mercenary to use and is slotted on their dashboard. You are then able to spend 3 gold at the guild in order to put a new achievement to work towards here in this slot. Now, during the town phase, building unlocks after specific campaign quests throughout the narrative campaign. So at the ending of Gigarat, the first scenario, we met the blacksmith, and the blacksmith unlocked for us. And at the beginning of the campaign, the guild is also available to us immediately for achievements and contracts. So these are represented by simple cards included in the game. And at the bottom, we see currently, these are the 2 that I have available to me. I do not know yet if the Healer, Tavern, and some of the others still in deck boxes are actually unlocked, or if they come later. I can tell you that IDG is really investing in the community and their feedback, and are allowing the community to help shape the development of the game. Something that a lot of folks have been asking for is a overland map for this phase of the game, as well as a double side to that where you can slot the buildings that you've unlocked within the town, allowing you to physically visit them and have that extra level of immersion during this phase of the game. The overland map, in theory, would then allow you to physically move your party towards the next available quest or side quest chain or events, things of that nature. And I'm not certain if this will be something they work towards, but the chatter is looking promising. Let's take a look at the blacksmith. This is where mercenaries can buy and craft weapons and armor, and it updates after each chapter of the campaign. As we are currently in Chapter 1, we can look at the Blacksmith Chapter 1 table there for the shop, which lists 15 items which can be purchased with gold or crafted at no gold cost if we have the resources obtained from prior scenarios. We can also craft our recipes that we've obtained here as well, should we have the prerequisite materials. Here we see the blacksmith shop for Chapter 1, and we see a variety of spelling errors which will be corrected in the final rulebook, but we can see examples like the copper breastplate, helmet, bracers, boots, leather boots, gloves, cap, and armor, copper sword, rounded shield, copper spear, copper dagger, short bow, spiked shield, and torch. I'll show you examples of these gear cards and the effects they will impart on your mercenary should you craft or buy them. I already told you about the healer and injuries. A minor injury is as simple as paying 1 gold to heal, a medium 2 gold, and a heavy injury 3 gold. That's about all there is to do at the healer, to my knowledge. The tavern, once unlocked, is a building that your team can visit to spend 2 gold to experience a tavern event, which are resolved like regular events. The players may only visit the tavern once per town phase, roll a d10, and determine which event they have triggered. Here we see a list of names of the events that are included in Chapter 1 for Bloodwork. I suspect that the second and third act of the narrative campaign and expansions will have additional events and side quests that can be pursued. The Mystic Trader is similar to the Blacksmith in that it's another building that you can craft and purchase gear from, but it focuses on accessories like jewelry, potions, and things of that nature, as well as being a place for you to trade for gold or trade your resources for other resources that you're looking for to craft your recipes, but you've been unfortunate to this point in obtaining during scenarios. Here we see an example of the Chapter 1 Mystic Trader, where they have healing potions, holy book, chromatic ring, gambler's die, common resource, rare resource, and gold coins available for purchase or trade. Here are examples of rare resources found in Chapter 1. The Hunters League is another building that's currently in development, which is giving mercenaries access to challenging one-off battles or perhaps strings of battles that will reward them with a companion who can join the mercenaries on their quests. This is still in development, but I believe this is how you would get a companion like a wolf that accompanies Halbjorn, for example, into battle. Finally, there is the Paragon, which is a building that grants access to secondary classes for each of the starting classes. Once the Paragon is unlocked and all mercenaries are at level 4, you would actually enter a story event pertaining to this building called Sorcery and Steel, and it is a special quest that I will not spoil here, but I suppose you could read it in the rulebook yourself as it is public. Finally, while at the blacksmith, you can craft your recipes that you've collected by simply spending the resource cost for the recipe found on the back. After the mercenaries finish their town phase, it's time for them to embark on their next quest in the unforgiving world of Marana. Quests are the primary objectives that drive the mercenaries' progress throughout the campaign, and each quest presents a specific goal that must be completed, and upon successful completion, mercenaries receive rewards such as experience, loot, and other bonuses. There are two types of quests, the main quests and side quests. Main quests are mandatory when they are presented, whereas side quests are rolled for on a table for that particular chapter that you are within. As you complete side quests, you may unlock an additional escalation quest, which is strung along to the one you just completed, and it usually leads to a named leader, like an elite or a boss, in which they usually will drop unique equipment that is only obtainable that one time you encounter them. Here's an example of the side quest table for Chapter 1. So if you were to take a D10 and it was time for you to not necessarily do a primary or main quest, but actually a side quest, you and your party would take a D10 and roll the die. Here we rolled a 4 on this side quest table 1 through 10. 4 gives us escalation, which pertains to side quest 5, 6, or 7, usually matching in color to whatever the escalation is. So a 1 is escalation for the side quests number 2 and 3. 4 is the escalation for side quests 5, 6, and 7, and 8 is the escalation for 9 and 10. Now, these escalation quests don't unlock until you've already successfully completed at least one of the side quests in their chain. So if we had rolled for a side quest for the very first time and we got 4, we as a group haven't completed any of these yet, we could then choose to either do 5, 6, or 7. If we had have rolled a 6, we would have had no choice and would have completed number 6. But the next time we do a side quest, because we have completed one of these, we would immediately go to the escalation and perhaps face a named elite or boss and have the opportunity to pursue some pretty tasty loot. So you can see there are 10 side quests with escalation already baked into the first act or chapter of this game. A full narrative campaign for Bloodwork has 3 chapters, and there are also additional expansions that will add even more content beyond this. So the narrative scope of the game is actually tremendously robust, and I find the writing and the immersion, the depth, the theme, a perfect blend. It's just the right amount of narrative to not bog down the table and is approachable for all players, I think. So for the quest structure, the campaign is structured with a series of static main quests and randomly selected side quests. The quest map is actually in a column on page 29 of the rulebook, and you complete each main and side quest in order as presented in that column, following the story text, completing events and battles until you are told to return to the town phase. Once you're done with the town phase, you return to this column or chart on page 29 and then complete the next tier. Some side quests have additional story and have page numbers indicated to direct you towards that for players to read, and usually this leads to unlocking a new building or some other boon. Here we see the Chapter 1 quest guide, where we start initially with the main quest, which would have been Gigarat, and then we move to... Here we have the main quest on page 54, and you can see this is the flavor text I had read before our first gameplay session, which led into the encounter with Gigarat the Unhinged, who we fought and successfully beat. He then fled, and then I read the story, The West of Westarch, the outro from that initial scenario. which now leaves us with unlocking the blacksmith and the town phase, which we currently are in. And then we would actually continue on to Servant of Delmaden, a outro, where we could potentially unlock the healer, as well as then into 1.5 and 1.6. I believe once those are done, we've completed the main quest and would roll for our first side quest. Now, depending on the difficulty of the quest, there is a required distance that the mercenaries must travel to reach that quest, ranging from 1 to single increments 2, 3, 4, 5 in order for the mercenaries to reach that quest. And for every increment of 1 in distance they have to travel to reach that quest, there will be one event that randomly occurs that they will need to resolve before moving to the next event or reaching the quest battle and commencing that. Now, these events can affect mercenaries in different ways, either by damaging them or providing them with buffs. All of this impacts the quest battle at the end, but these buffs and injuries, things like that, are typically forgotten after that battle finishes. But any items received or lost due to events are kept or maintained. During these events, you have two different colored D10. One you denote as value 1 through 10, and the other is increments of 10, such that you're able to roll up to a increment of 100 when the two die are used together. I'll quickly read the first event as an example for you here. The broken carriage. The forest had long since begun reclaiming the old farm road, roots tearing through what little path remained. That's when we saw it, a shattered carriage lying on its side, one wheel spinning lazily in the wind like a broken compass. Flies buzzed thick in the air. Closer inspection revealed the source, a man pinned beneath the wreckage, his features gnawed, sunken, and far too still. That is, until his eyes opened. He had died days ago, of pain, of thirst, or both, and then come back wrong. Now he clawed at the air with broken fingers, bound by the weight of wood and fate. But the glint of unopened crates inside the carriage promised potential spoils. The question remains, do we help the man who no longer is, or leave him to rot? So, as a party, you can attempt to free the driver who appears undead. Gather your strongest, make a combined might check, roll 4d10 plus all might bonuses, and your target is a 35. If you pass, there's text, and you would then gain rolls on particular loot tables and end the event. If you fail, there is narrative text, and you gain less favorable things, but still get some favorable things at the end of that. Or you can choose to ignore the driver and you turn your backs and walk away, but you still get to pick up some loot kind of lying beside the carriage. So that is a overall positive event. I presume there are also some negative ones. Drawn that broken carriage, and you've already done that as part of this chapter, you would then roll again and just pick a different event you haven't already experienced. Okay, and finally, I am going to show you the blacksmith and crafting. We only have the guild available and the blacksmith currently. There's nothing for us to do with the guild as of yet. We don't have all of the goblin heads we need or the number of lost ledgers that we need. We could potentially turn in goblin heads individually. I think the only person that could do that is Halbjorn with 3 heads for a random bronze rune. But I'd rather see if he can get 5 to get a random silver rune, so we'll hold off. So let's take a look at the items in the blacksmith's shop currently available, and we will take a look at that. First, let's take a look at the copper set. This is a heavy armor set that only currently Halbjorn would be able to utilize. The breastplate would cost 3 copper in material to craft, the helmet 2 copper, the bracers 1 copper, and the boots 2 copper. And if you were to buy the whole set with gold, it would be a total of 24 gold to buy everything outright. Pretty cool though. You can see the symbology here with the anvil and the 3 diamonds below it. The red diamond on the far right just shows that this loot is available in the first chapter of the game. If there were 2 red diamonds, that would mean chapter 2. Then we see that we have the name of the item at the top of the card. These are for the body, head, leg, and arm slots. And if a character had these slotted, not only would they have their base protection, they would then have this armor value should that area of the body be struck by an enemy that they can also utilize to mitigate damage. The breastplate itself offers 3 armor, the head 2, but the head does add protection +1 against ranged physical attacks. So that seems pretty legit. And the boots allow knockback resist +2. So Halbjorn would be more steadfast and enemies would have a harder time pushing him around the board. And if you were to have all 4 of these equipped, the copper set 4, you get +1 might attribute rating. So this is what I mean by the game has item sets immediately available right out of the gate that you can work towards that really have that Diablo flavor, and unique equipment is going to be even that more exciting when you think about the added perks that may come with that particular gear. This is the loot grind crawl that I love about games like Diablo. So excited to see a narrative campaign game introduce item sets like this that directly affect our attributes and proficiencies and the way we use our mercenaries on the board. Let's then look at the copper weapons. We have the copper sword, which allows attacking at range 1, hits on a 7+, and inflicts 3 damage. That's the difference between it and Halbjorn's runed hammer currently. And it also enables exploit on same hit. And locate on same hit location ×3. If I'm reading that correctly, I believe if you just make 3 successful hits in a combat roll to one particular area, then you get exploit for that attack. Next we have the copper dagger. This hits on a 5+ for accuracy, so much more likely to hit, but inflicts 2 damage, similar to the runed hammer we saw in the last gameplay. No added ability from that weapon. Below that we see the copper spear. Please note that both of these are actually built towards Saren's current specialization, and would give her melee abilities on the field of battle as opposed to just range with her elven bow. Whereas the might symbol is next to the copper sword, so that is meant for someone like Halbjorn. The copper spear also has might, so he could also use that. So that has range 1, hits on a 7+, and inflicts 4 damage per hit. That is huge, and it has the optional range -1, but attack rate -1 and accuracy +1. So if I'm reading Copper Spear correctly, I believe there's probably a typo on this card. My guess is that it actually has range 2, like a polearm. You don't need to be immediately adjacent to an enemy. You could be 1 field away and strike them with this long spear or polearm, but you have the option of decreasing your range to being within just adjacency, and then drop your attack rate by 1, so 1 less die in the attack, but you get accuracy +1, making the rolls more likely to hit. Next, let's quickly look at Spiked Shield and Round Shield. Both of these are similar to Halbjorn's Wooden Shield in that they offer 1 protection as long as they are equipped. They are both Act 1 pieces of gear. The Spiked Shield has so we see the Spiked Shield has block and in brackets 2, 8+. This means every time that unit is targeted and has been successfully struck based on the enemy roll, you get to roll 2 die, and for every 8+, you successfully block 2 incoming damage. Also, the shield grants Thorns +2, which means any adjacent enemy attempting to strike you, whether they hit or not, will receive 2 true damage from you from Thorns. The Round Shield has block 3 on a 7+, so 3 die, and on every 7+, you reduce 2 damage from that attack. Both of those shields are huge upgrades from the Wooden Shield for Halbjorn. The Torch shows Vision +1. This is pretty cool. So the Torch Vision +1 is a ability that, when present, gives you the opportunity once per scenario to take a peek at the top card of the Fate deck, either before the battle commences or during the battle once, and based on what you see on that Fate card, you can choose to put it back on top or tuck it on the bottom of the deck. And it also is considered a melee weapon in your offhand slot, and all of your attacks gain burn. We also have the Short Bow, which has a range of 3, hits on a 7+ and inflicts 4 damage per successful hit, with the option action -1 and accuracy +2. So rather than having 3 actions that turn, you only have 2, but your attack gains +2 accuracy. Pretty great. And finally, we have the Leather Armor set, which has additional armor for each body slot and has the set bonus of Agility +1, as well as Speed +1 and Flanking +1. Flanking would then give additional benefits in combat in terms of creating damage. Flanking then gives any mercenary who's attacking an enemy that has an ally adjacent to that enemy gets +1 damage to that attack. I currently don't have silk or any of this magic powder. I don't actually know the name of that. I'd have to look to craft either of the recipes we obtained. So for now, I'll ignore those. As I have 15 gold, I'll spend the 15 requirement to buy the copper boots, copper helmet, and copper bracers so that I have additional armor in every body slot for Halbjorn to keep his health up, and work my way towards the breastplate after the next couple scenarios to get that might bonus from a complete set. If I had the Mystic Trader available, which is not currently unlocked, I would have gone and traded a resource to her to get an additional copper resource in exchange, such that I could have crafted that with resources only. Let's go ahead and slot in Halbjorn's new gear. And that concludes our town phase, and we are ready to pick up where we left off with finishing Gigarat and moving into the next branch of that main quest. And once we're done that, we would have another town phase and ultimately roll for a side quest, I believe. I hope you liked this video, that it's helpful and sheds some light on the town phase, which I think is honestly still in development and is only going to get better. but I do think it is crunchy, fun, leads to a lot of table talk if you're playing this cooperatively. And there is a lot of depth in terms of how you want to play your characters and build them, what gear to go for. It's very exciting. I look forward to playing this some more and sharing with you good folks. The video, subscribe, add a comment. I would greatly appreciate it. Cheers.